to wrap up another HBO series that Zach finally had the privilege to finish. The Idol, the long talked about show of the summer. Zach, I've said my piece. Let me know what you thought about all of the cards folding in together for the finale of The Idol, season 1.
All right. Well, I'm curious to hear some more of your thoughts on it now that we can talk a little bit in more detail, and I'll throw up a Idol spoilers tag for us, even though I don't think we need to necessarily get too specific in talking about the way the show wrapped up. But, you know, I think the thing about the finale specifically, episode 5 specifically, is that it both exemplified some of the things that are most exciting about the show and some of the things that I liked about the show the most, and some of its absolute most dreadful, least thought through, most poorly executed aspects. Because, like, by that point, you're finally fully aware, like, okay, they are doing the whole, like, sexual cat and mouse thing. This is, Fatal Attraction. This is Duke of Burgundy. This is whatever you want to call it. They're just not doing it compellingly or convincingly at all. There's the turn that happens basically towards the end of episode 4 into episode 5, where you're supposed to sense the power dynamic shift, and it feels like they happen for no other reason than the forces behind the show deciding, okay, now it has to be like this. It doesn't feel like an evolution. It doesn't feel consequential to a certain thing. It just sort of flips, and the weekend shifts into like bumbling sweaty mode. And I don't know. I mean, like, I dig a collection of really talented people like Moses Sumney and Susanna Sun sitting around in a house as this sort of like, cultish musical family. Like, those aspects of the show are pretty exciting, and there's a lot of really beautiful cinematography towards that end. I loved some of those shots that did slow zooms into Lily Rose Depp by the pool. I just found it to be kind of phony and kind of like unconvincing completely. And I was willing to maybe feel like, all right, whatever. It was a bumpy landing, but I didn't mind where they ultimately landed the plane. And then they add a whole coda that just was nonsense. Like, I get that you were able to film at the Weeknd's concert, and that's a pretty cool venue and scenario to have as a backdrop. But holy shit, that needed a rewrite. I really thought that last little bit of the show completely ruined any journey that they thought they took us on, at least for me personally. Did you also have that reaction to at least the end bit of it, or were you more thrown off by the entire last episode?
So I see the show as trashy. That's the whole point of the show. I think some people have come into it as a drama. Some people have come into it not expecting the comedy. I think it's supposed to be a joke. I think the whole bit of it is satire. I think when Simons was doing it, it was called a satire, presented as a satire. And then the moment that the boys took over, it was said to have become the thing it was satirizing. I think it's still a satire. Maybe not as poignant, maybe not as sharp as it could have been the other way around. But I guess my question to you would be, the cinematography is there. Mm-hmm. The acting all around except Abel's is there. Do you think that the issue is the delivery, or is the issue the story?
I think the issue is the delivery, because I think there could be a story there that is interesting. Like, I liked the stuff about the hyper focus of this team of people in crafting this person's career. And there's even elements of, her management tolerating certain aspects of the Tedros character's behavior as long as they're in service of her music. Right. Yeah. I think that's all interesting stuff that you could do. I just don't think they executed it in a particularly interesting way, in a particularly compelling way. Like, a lot of that stuff and like that could have been more subtextual became text, and it just sort of services these extremely cringy, like faux sensationalistic, like BDSM music production scenes that are like, 50 Shades of Grey level
Which you
levels
worked
of
on.
like I guess makes sense, right? 50 Shades of Grey level like titillation, not exactly, like super scandalous stuff. It's more just I don't know. Again, I go back to the idea that this is a very like, I think the things that they're doing to try and portray it as some kind of edgy show are very like tame in a certain way. It's like, yeah, you don't typically see stuff like this on TV, but it's not like challenging, it's not upsetting, it's just kind of like porn. And it's like, yeah, we're showing this stuff, isn't that subversive? But I think it's not subversive in terms in service of a greater goal. And maybe if there is more of that like power play aspect to it in terms of like the balance shifting back and forth, maybe it becomes more fun, more cat and mouse. It just wasn't really there for me. I think like it was a show that just really lacked juice in the end.
I'm wondering if because the Weeknd supposedly wrote the original draft of whatever was supposed to be with Simons. I feel like it's a joke that either way, whoever did it was going to have the same punchline, which was that, rug pull in the last episode.
Yeah.
If Simons would have done it, do you think people would have liked the story more if she delivered it the way she was going to deliver it, as opposed to the big reveal coming from the way, like you said, where it's not really cookie crumbs on the way there. It's more so like you're just stopping to have sex along the way until you get there. Because it is a whole story about seduction.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of it, it became, is the story of seduction coming from a dude, or is the story of seduction coming from a more, what would have been an extra episode storytelling from the mind of Amy Simons? And with 80%, which still boggles my mind, 80% of it being shot already, can they still release the version of that? I would love to see her take on it.
Yeah, I'd be really curious. I mean, I don't like to blind speculate on things I haven't seen. It's not like I know Amy Simons well enough to be like, well, this is 100% how her take would be. I also think it's a little like gender essentialist to be like, well, the woman's story would have been better represented by a woman showrunner. Like it still has a lot of the same creative forces behind it.
In this case, though.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not like saying.
But I agree with you too. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's like an impossibility. I'm just not saying like Amy Simons would have cured the show. Like it still has a lot of the same elements as we know. So like maybe not. Maybe her version would have been bad too. I don't know. I think that it was. I think it. There is some sort of misconception or misjudgment along the way.
Yeah. Because a lot of people feel like her version was what was taken away, and this is like the trashed down version of it, even though we've never seen hers.
Right.
I like the core story of this idea, like you were mentioning, of this is the pop star who's being used by her team and trying to siphon out whatever. Even when there was this big issue with her mother, they still tried to make that part of her creative process.
Yeah.
Then the moment Tedros comes in, he's using her the same way too, because as what's told to Tedros, you are an untalented man who knows how to get all this talent around you. This is a story we've seen in Oppenheimer when you and I discussed it last week, that it's purposely shown that he can't ever solve the equations, but he can direct everybody around him to do it. We had just mentioned it with an earlier movie as well, this idea that they are not the ones who are creating something. Oh, the Beanie Bubble. But they can get everybody around him to do it, and that's how they talked about this character of Tedros. A man with absolutely zero talent, but who can direct all the people around him. And there may be this push and pull, as you still have the spoilers thing out there, where the person being used and then being used by the other people who think that they're using Tedros as well, ends up becoming this whole full circle thing of like, who's really the person controlling who. And I think that's a really cool story. Even if it was delivered in the trashiest way possible, I think it was rushed at the end, because there's a time jump that happens in that final episode where you're like, why? Why is there a time jump? I need to see the fallout, right? Like if you're showing me all these little climaxes, where is that fallout? I think that there is a really interesting story there, and I think that all of the people who they had involved, I saw Divine Joy Randolph be mentioned in the chat as well, who has a lot of great movies on the horizon. I think that they are a pivotal part of this series, and when you realize what she plays into the show, she is a big part of the twist at the end. So I think she has the biggest Easter eggs when she's spying that kind of leads you to what that ending is going to be. There is the opening shot. There is them watching Basic Instinct. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that makes the story intriguing. And I think seeing the stuff that might have been cut out from the Amy Seimetz documentary could have added a lot more psychological aspects to the character, to one of the main characters in the show. So I think that's the only thing that's missing. It reminds me of like when you get these different cuts from people. I know Snyder Cut's going to be like the biggest one that people can like reference, and where you're seeing someone's different take on it, and you're almost
or like
getting
the Blade
like
Runner director's cut.
That too, yeah. Or you can even get into like I don't know, a lot of Marvel versions of movies where it's like, oh, you got this version of it, but it was written by somebody else, or I don't know. I feel like we got an incomplete story, but they were still kind of they cut out a scene, but still kind of left the repercussions of that scene that as an audience we did not see. So,
yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a show that was maybe a little more like cobbled together than like smoothly
made last minute
assembled. Yeah, I mean, like even the scene that The Weeknd tweeted out when that whole Rolling Stone fiasco happened,
right?
Wasn't in the final cut of the show. Like Dan Levy's character, who was part of like the announcements and stuff, does he show up again after that first episode or first two episodes?
I don't remember him showing up at all like that. And again, you know, with Rachel Sennett being on the show, with what's her name, who was in Red Rocket being on the show
Susanna
as well.
Sun.
You had a lot of you had a lot of these push and pulls of like, oh, they were in the original cut, and now they're gonna walk out of this one, and then they didn't walk out of this one. And then they toured with The Weeknd for like the music of the show as well. I will ask you this one because there's that blurred line of death of the author and then when you want the author to just die. Do you see it being a team with The Weeknd and with Sam Levitz? And more so, I'm curious about The Weeknd because I know how people feel about Sam. Where an artist is going to sing these songs that are very edgy, that it's a blame on the artist? And it's not just a character they're creating?
What do you mean? Like if he's
Marriage
producing material that is like misogynistic, does that make The Weeknd misogynistic? Is sort of where you're saying?
But right there's already putting a word, right? I would say in Marriage Story, that is a man who had a very public divorce. And in having that very public divorce, he made a movie where he cast two people to, you know, kind of portray his divorce with Jennifer Jason Leigh. Do you see this?
I don't like to I don't like to hyper criticize creators of material for wanting to engage with potentially hot button issues or things that skirt the line of appropriateness. I don't want to like hyper criticize that because I think I think those are really interesting things, and I think we want our filmmakers to be able to reflect society and comment on society in order to get like great art. I just think it also sometimes will reveal their own blind spots and reveal their own prejudices or maybe, you know, lack of education in certain areas. So like you set yourself up for making I don't know, insufficient art, I guess, in some ways, but it's not like I don't want them to be doing it or think they shouldn't be. And I don't have a problem with like The Weeknd trying to make a show about all these things. I just think he kind of was bad at it.
For sure. I think when you're talking about someone like Sam, who took the experiences of the people around him to make Euphoria successful.
Right.
And then kind of pretended to vent through, what was it?
Malcolm and Marie.
Malcolm and Marie. Do you have The Weeknd here, as a lot of people have alluded to, as being the rock star who was used? And that he almost came under the gaze of a pop star, and as we all know, he made a whole EP, fantastic EP, by the way, after a breakup with a very big pop star. And just like Sam takes instances in his life and turns it into art, is The Weeknd maybe taking instances in his life and turning it into art? I don't know, a diss? Is it something that he is allowed to do as a creative, or is there a and again, this is like a boring conversation to have, but is there a, I don't know, a responsibility to keep that on his own? Should it be more embellished is what I'm saying than him playing himself?
No, I think,
in the show.
I think that's an interesting conversation. I don't think that's a boring topic. I think, I think what the answer is like, well, that's more interest. It might be more interesting to him than it is to us. Maybe his responsibility is just to open it up in a way where it's not just you venting like it feels like in Malcolm and Marie. It feels like something that has a little bit more like actual substance and commentary that's relatable to the bigger world. And I don't think I think sometimes artists, things happen to them that they find interesting, and they don't necessarily realize the best ways to translate that to everybody's experience. And I wonder if maybe there's some of that here, in that, like, yeah, this might feel really right to The Weeknd, who is immersed in the music industry, but to the rest of us, it just sort of feels like your perspective.
It doesn't feel like real life. Yeah. All right, fair enough. That is The Idol out on HBO Max. Season 2 coming soon, Zach?
Do you want a season 2 at this point? I mean,
what's the point of a season 2? I just want the Simon Cut. I just want to see the different ways it was told. That's it.
See, here's the thing. I actually could get talked into a season 2 without The Weeknd, and I'm not just saying that because like I didn't particularly like his acting on it. I just felt like they came to the end of his character before they decided to do a weird left-hand turn at the end.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's more so this idea that he felt like he was used in some personal instance in his life, and then made a show where he forgot to give us all the other details.
Yeah.
In that translation of how he felt slighted at a certain point. Because to him, this is the what-if scenario in his life if he would have, I don't know, been used. And I'm going to give you my pitch right here since we're in full spoilers. I don't even think it was Selena. I think it was Drake. I think Drake would have pop-starred him, and he would have been under Drake, and he would have been Tedros by him. There was this bit, I don't know if you heard, one of my favorite parts behind the scenes. Since this was all filmed under him, obviously the Simons thing got deleted, and they came in and they filmed in his house. He does all the music. He is the one starring. They saved a lot of money because they were able to obviously do his concert and everything.
Yeah.
All the wardrobe is his. All the wardrobe are clothes that were given to him that he keeps in a closet that he would never wear, and was told, create this character, this persona that would never be you. So everything that he gets made fun of, the rat tail, the ugly clothes, is The Weeknd wearing what everybody wanted to gift him and the person that they wanted him to become, and he just embodied it in the show. So maybe that's a more interesting behind the scenes bit than having to actually see this disgusting person with his rat tail drinking shots.
I'm more
that he
interested
can't
in whatever that the Weeknd Drake show is. Maybe if a more homoerotic version of this show would have been more interesting.
Maybe, right? Because think about it, right? Drake wanted him under OVO after Take Care. That didn't fall through because The Weeknd said, I'm not going to become Party Next Door and you're just going to siphon ideas out of me. And look at where Party Next Door is and look at where The Weeknd is. Making terrible performances on HBO. Do you remember him playing himself in Uncut Gems?
I do. Yeah.
That was good?
Yeah, it's a cameo role. It's maybe the best place for him to be. I
see. Well, that is The Idol out on HBO. Yeah. HBO Max? I don't know which one it was, but
HBO
that is the
proper.
The recap to the series.
Abel's still got a collaboration with our boy Trey Edward Schultz in the works. Are you excited for that one?
100%. And I don't want y'all coming back and saying that Aubrey's such a good actor in that one. He wasn't great, but I don't think it was the worst part of that show. I think there was a good cast in there. I think it had an interesting story, and I'm curious to see how it holds up in the future since HBO put all their marbles on there, and that was their big show of the summer that they were reaching out to.